You should have your hands and eyes and looking at the smartboard. You should also have your guided notes out in front of you. Okay, so you should be doing that now, getting your guided notes out in front of you, looking at the smartboard. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about interactions between organisms. So you just took your pre-assessment, so you have a kind of an idea of what you know and what you still need to know. And we're going to start taking some guided notes so you're ready for your radio show next week. And you should be able to say, I can understand how these organisms interact between each other and how they can have relationships, just like you might have a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or even your best friend. These organisms have relationships in nature, just like you have relationships with other people. So let's start off with adapting to the environment. We'll be talking about natural selection. So a characteristic that makes an individual better suited to its environment may eventually become common in that species through a process called natural selection. Okay, so a characteristic that makes an individual better suited to its environment may eventually become common in that species through a process called natural selection. So you had natural selection as a WOD. It was just on our WOD quiz yesterday. The difference between natural selection and adaptation, which we'll talk about in a moment, is that natural selection is that process that it takes to get to having one of the adaptations that we'll discuss. So it's the process to create the adaptation. And so this is how natural selection works. So individuals whose unique characteristics are best suited for their environment tend to survive and produce offspring. And we said that offspring is the fancy word for babies. So they're able to survive and have babies or offspring. And natural selection then results in adaptations. So natural selection then results in adaptations. And what are adaptations? You should be familiar with this as well. Adaptations are the behaviors and physical characteristics, so things that you can see, they're physical characteristics that allow organisms to live successfully in their environments. Okay, individuals with characteristics that are poorly suited. Okay, so individuals with characteristics that are poorly suited to their environment are less likely to survive. And because they're less likely to survive, that those characteristics that are not so great, then they may disappear from the species over time. That may disappear over time. So that's what the process is. So over a period of time, you have natural selection where those that are strong survive, those with the best kinds of features and characteristics are able to survive and have babies, and those who don't have very good characteristics, well, they're not able to survive or have babies, so those poor characteristics aren't able to continue over time. So that's that process called natural selection. And adaptations are just the behaviors and the physical characteristics that allow the organisms to live successfully in their environment. So let's take a look at some adaptations that prey might have. So predator and prey, we haven't talked about that, but you might have heard about predator and prey relationships. Prey, they're praying not to get eaten alive. So these are some things that the prey might do to try to adapt to protect themselves. So for example, if you look up in the top right hand corner, you might think that this is a snake, but this is actually a caterpillar that looks like a snake. This is called mimicry. It's mimicking the way that a snake will look. So that way, if the predators that might eat that caterpillar, they might think, oh, that's a snake. I'm not going to touch it, and they can back off. So mimicry is one adaptation that the organisms have. You might also have a false coloring like this moth. That moth has these bright colors that kind of makes it look like there's little eye spots on the wings. So if you're in like a dark forest and you saw that, you might think, oh, that's a big animal. So it would scare away some potential predators. You also have camouflage. Like if you look on this leaf, you might not see this insect. So the predators might walk right past. So that's another type of physical characteristic that protects the prey. So all of these things are adaptations, physical characteristics. So the prey have these to protect themselves. The next section talks about a niche. Okay, and you might have a niche in your own family or in your own habitat at home. So a niche is kind of like your role. So maybe you're the funny one or the one that gets in trouble all the time, or maybe you're the smart one in your family, or whatever it is that you think you are in your family, you can consider yourself playing that role. So a niche is a role that organisms play in nature. So the role of an organism in its habitat, or how it makes its living, how it's able to live, how it makes its living, is called its niche. Okay, so a niche includes all of these different things that it could do. It includes the type of food that the organism eats. Okay. It includes how it obtains food. It includes which other organisms use that organism as food. So which other organisms use that organism as food. It includes when and how the organism reproduces. And also the physical conditions it requires to survive. Okay. So this is what a niche is. It might include all of these different things. And tomorrow we're going to talk about how these organisms interact more and how it is important that if they share a niche, that they're a different species and they're doing different things. And if they share the same niche, then and they are competing with each other, how that all works out. And that's something that we'll discuss more than tomorrow. We'll also have an adaptation wrap to help you remember what an adaptation is that we'll listen to, and some other video clips that you can watch. So put those guided notes in your classroom folder. So make sure you put your guided notes in the classroom folder so they're ready for tomorrow. Put those in a nice, neat stack. And then listen to Miss Burke for any further instructions. And I will see you tomorrow.